witches, good morning. Tiffany here on Bewitching.Bemused. Today I'm talking about black salt, how to make it, what it's used for, and of course, what it is. Before we start, let me say that while regular salt is great for kitchen witchery, please do not eat this particular version or feed it to someone else. There are perfectly edible black salts that you can buy, and there's also alternative recipes that you can make that are edible, completely edible, but this is ritual black salt, not edible black salt, so this version is not one you want to eat. Now, if you already know all of the background information and you just want to skip ahead to the recipe that I personally use for this, I've popped a timestamp right over here so you can just go ahead and jump ahead in the video to that. So black salt, also sometimes called witch's salt or drive-away salt, is most often used for protection and in hexing and cursing. Now, don't be put off by the hexing or cursing part. You, of course, don't have to use it for that if that's not part of your craft and if that's not something you're comfortable with. It's also great for removing hexes or curses and, well, like I already said, protection. But because it's good for protection, you may be asking yourself, like I once did, what sets this apart from regular salt, which is also good for protection? A big difference between white salt and black salt is that white salt can be used for things like healing, cleansing, blessing, and absorbing negative energies, whereas black salt isn't necessarily quite as good for healing or blessing. And there are added energies and ingredients in black salt that make it great for repelling negative energy. So in cursing and hexing, it's a great ingredient for making an enemy feel uneasy or uncomfortable, as well as keeping them at bay. When it comes to protection overall, just think of black salt as regular salt with a little extra oomph. Now, don't get me wrong, it can still be used to absorb negative energy if you are using it to cleanse a space as opposed to protect a space. At the end of the day, it all comes down to your intention while you're using it. When I get down to the list of ingredients, I will point out for you which ones are used for repelling negative energy and which ones are used for absorbing negative energy. That way, it's just really clear why everything that's used is used and what sets this apart from regular salt. Now, once again, please do not eat this particular version. There are other recipes out there if you want an edible version. But I do want to add a quick side note about using this for healing. Like I said, black salt is great for repelling. It's great for driving away. So if the intention of your healing work is to drive something out of your mind, your heart, or your body, black salt is an awesome ingredient for that, alongside professional medical attention, of course. But it's great for things like infections, chronic pain, viruses, inflammation, negative thought patterns, things like that, things you want to send away. But I wouldn't necessarily use this for something like a sprain, a strain, a broken bone, and definitely not to ensure a healthy pregnancy. Ooh. But what are some other ways you can use this? One more time, don't eat it. Like I kind of already touched on, black salt can often be used in a similar or the same manner as regular salt, such as sprinkling it on windowsills, doorways, or around your property. But please keep in mind, if you have pets, do not let them eat it. Like I said, it's not edible. I've probably already said that a lot of times, but just keep that in the back of your mind. I know my dog would lick up salt on the ground, so just, if you have pets, keep that in mind. And if you're sprinkling it on your property, of course, just like regular salt, you want to avoid any plants, house plants, or grassy areas. It can mess with the pH levels of the soil and kill your plants. You can also add it to incense, oils, and candle dressings. However, this particular one, I wouldn't recommend adding it to any sort of wash or spray because it can stain. So diverging from those similar uses to regular salt, here's some more uses for black salt. Add it to curses, hexes, and the like to increase their effectiveness. Like I already mentioned, for yourself, it can help remove curses. I would not recommend putting this one in a ritual bath though. Please keep that in mind. It has ingredients that you probably don't want getting into any bodily nooks or crannies. Keep a sachet or a small jar of it on your person, so anybody that you find less than pleasant will steer clear of you. And of course, you can also use it in the same regard to absorb negative energy, whether that's negative energies that you are feeling, negative emotions, or just in the atmosphere around you or people you interact with. You can also place that sachet or small jar underneath your pillow to keep nightmares at bay. You can sprinkle it in someone's footsteps or along a path that they've recently walked to keep them away from you. Sprinkle it in an enemy's yard to make them feel ill at ease and make them want to move away. But please keep in mind, just because they're your enemy doesn't mean you should go around destroying nature, so avoid their grass. You can also add it to water for scrying during a dark moon. If there's any other uses that you have for black salt that I didn't list previously, because there are definitely many more, please leave those down in the comments below. Okay, let's get to the recipe. Now, if you don't have the time, ingredients, or privacy perhaps to make this on your own, I have included a link down below in the description box where you can just purchase it pre-made. In this list of ingredients, I've included some alternatives that you can use. It's completely up to you, play around with it. You can use the alternatives or the optional versions to personalize it, just experiment with the recipe, make it how you really like it and how you feel is the most impactful. And of course, you can also use these to personalize it for a very specific intention. If you're just making a small batch for a very specific use or specific spell. Like I said, this is just one version, so there are many more out on the internet, and if you don't like mine, I don't know, I guess you can go look those ones up. The first ingredient is salt. You can use kosher, table salt, sea salt. The coarseness level and what kind you use is completely up to you. Our second ingredient is black pepper. Again, you can use peppercorns and you can grind them up, or you can just use already ground black pepper. Now, the alternative to this is cast iron shavings. You can actually take those right from a skillet or from your cauldron. The two work the same, but personally, I don't really like using my ritual tools and scratching them or damaging them, or my kitchen tools for that matter, for the purpose of making things like this, when an alternative like black pepper works just fine. Third ingredient is ash. Now, preferably you're going to use ash that was from a ritual fire or from magical workings. Personally, I collect ash all the time. Anytime I burn incense or use a ritual fire, I save the ash afterward. But if you're in a rush, you can always just take it from like the barbecue or the fireplace. That's fine too. The final main ingredient is going to be activated charcoal. Now, this is charcoal that comes in a disc. We usually use it for incense, but it also gets used for hookah. I've seen some recipes that recommend food coloring for this, which I suppose, sure, you can use, yes, but I highly recommend if you're going to use that, use powdered food coloring, because if you use the liquid food coloring, it's gonna make clumps and potentially dissolve some of the salt. Your two optional ingredients, which I'm not going to be using today, are ash from your own hair or your own fingernail clippings. This will really personalize the salt. And the other one are any kind of herbs that you may want to add that add intention to your usage of this. So if you're primarily using the black salt for protection or blessing, you might want to add something like sage or rosemary. So as promised, I do want to let you know which ingredients do what, so you understand why each one is going into this batch and why black salt is so different from regular table salt or, white salt or pink Himalayan sea salt, all the other salts out there. Salt and charcoal are great for absorbing. And again, this is another reason why I kind of prefer not to use food coloring for it. I've seen people say that the charcoal is just there to give it its color, but personally, I think that's only part of it. Then black pepper and ash are great for warding, repelling, and driving away, which, as I mentioned, is what sets it apart from regular salt. Okay, let's do this. Now, the most important part of this is doing everything with intention. You'll notice as you watch this, I'm stirring everything very, very carefully. It's because while I'm adding and mixing the ingredients in, I'm focusing on what their purpose is, what they do. Like I said, when I mix in the black pepper, I'm focusing on it repelling things, repelling negativity, sending away things that I don't want near me. So you should know with absolute certainty what the purpose of each ingredient is and focus on it doing its job job as you add it in. Now, I started to mix these in the jar I was going to be storing it in, but it was the first time I've used this size jar with this recipe, and I kind of realized halfway through, oh crap, this isn't quite big enough to mix directly in, so you'll notice me swap them out. I mix it in a different bowl and add it to the jars later. One, I was too lazy to refilm it, and two, you know, mistakes happen when you're making ritual things, and I want everybody to know that. Nobody's perfect, and it happens. It doesn't ruin the whole batch. Don't worry if you make a little tiny mistake in your mixing and your measuring in whatever. Just know that your stuff is still gonna be good. Nothing is ever 100% perfect, and so I thought I would just include that little side note in this video that, hey, it's okay if there's a little flub. Don't toss the whole thing out. Your intentions are still there, and your salt is still gonna work just fine, but of course, this applies to lots of other things in witchcraft and in life as well. The first things I like to measure out are my salt and my black pepper. I like to use a 3-to-1 ratio, 3 parts salt, 1 part pepper. Measure out your salt into your mortar and pestle, and you can decide the coarseness. If you want it still in those chunky, coarse rocks, feel free to keep it that way. If you're using a regular table salt, but you want it more of a fine powder, you can grind that up too. Again, it's completely up to you. If you're using peppercorns, make sure to grind those up as well. You definitely don't want the whole ones in there, but again, the consistency of that pepper, how much you want it ground up is totally up to you. I do grind this one down a bit because I like the pepper being a little bit more powdery. Mix those two together, and remember, like I already said, focus on what the purpose of each one is. Add in your ash and mix that as well. I don't usually measure this. As long as I have more than a couple teaspoons on hand, I add in as much as I can. And finally, take your charcoal disc, grind it up, and mix it in. For the size of this recipe, I would just use 1 charcoal disc, but if you want your salt to be a bit darker, you can add another one in there or a third one. Again, it's up to you. You can really personalize this recipe. After that, if you like, you can say a little blessing or intention over it, charge it up. Personally, I like to wait until I'm actually using it, and then I take out how much I need, I put in my intention into that, and then use it. Store it away somewhere it is going to stay completely dry, and that's it. If you like this video, please hit that thumbs up, and if you're brand new here and you like this video, make sure to hit subscribe and don't forget to ding that little bell so you get notifications for new content and live streams in the future. Social media is down below, and aside from that, I think that's everything. See you soon, stay magical.